The Cincinnati Bengals have managed to create one of the most unique draft problems that I have ever seen in the history of doing this podcast. And we're going to watch it now here on Know What's About It. What's up, everyone? Thank you so much for tuning in to Know What's About It. I am your host, Josh Butts. And today we are going to be talking about the Cincinnati Bengals draft position. Now, the Bengals in the first round are picking 10th overall. And, usually you would think, hey, they're definitely going to get a guy, top 10 player, top 10 prospect. They're going to get someone to fill their hole that they have and fix all of their problems. Problem is, the Bengals defense has a lot of holes. And we've talked about this before, like how the Bengals needed to hit free agency hard, and they started off really hard. They got Boye Mafe to replace Trey Hendrickson. They got Bryan Cook to replace Geno Stone, and they got Jonathan Allen to kind of bolster up that defensive line. And I like those moves. I really do. I'm big fan of all of those guys. I think all of those were great moves. But the issue is the Bengals still need to sign linebacker. They still need a rotational edge to replace Joseph Asai. You've arguably need another defensive tackle. You need a backup safety. And that's just on the defensive side of the ball. Now, the way the current NFL draft is projected to fall, and I've been using PFF as my main mock draft simulator. Now, some mock draft simulators are different, but I really like PFF. This isn't sponsored or anything. I just like their data that they have and the analysis. So that's why I use PFF. But the Bengals' main guys that they're going to be targeting are all possibly going to be taken by the time you get to pick 10, unless something crazy happens with like Ty Simpson or there's a run on wide receivers. Due to the lack of quarterbacks in this class worthy of a top 10 pick, there's a chance the main guys the Bengals are planning on being there at 10 are all gone. So I want to look at free agency and can the Bengals sign one or two more guys to help plug up these holes? Because right now, being at that 10 spot, there's a chance that the Bengals either are going to have to reach for a player to fill a need, or they're just not going to be able to go best player available, or the best player available is someone they could draft, but isn't actually someone they necessarily needed. So first of all, let's look at some guys who I'm calling this Cincy's saviors. And, there's not a whole lot of big names here, but I think signing one of these guys could make a big difference for the Cincinnati Bengals. So I threw Jeff Okudah on there just because he does have a lot of potential. He hasn't really ever gotten it going in the league. I could see the Bengals maybe going after him, giving him a shot. But really, this list starts at Rasul Douglas. They need a CB, someone who is going to maybe challenge Jalen Davis for that nickel position, or someone who they can put on the outside and then push Dax back into the slot. And that would allow for them to have their two best outside corners, and then Dax in the slot, three best corners on the field. And then also, like I said, maybe a rotational defensive tackle. Someone like Shelby Harris, DJ Reader, who's been with the Bengals, Larry Ogunjobi, who's been with the Bengals before, a retread type player who maybe isn't as good as they were on the Bengals before, but can be in that rotation, who's shown that they do care about the team, they like the team, and they can help this team make the playoffs and go on a run. Other guys I like, edge Cam Jordan. I don't really know what he's up to. I don't know if he's asking for a ton of money, if he's waiting for after the draft, if he's going to end up retiring. I threw him on here because I think he'd be really good. He's older, but the Bengals seem to have a lot of love for their current younger edges, guys like Shamar Stewart and Miles Murphy. So bringing in someone like Cam Jordan to kind of lead them would be helpful, I believe. And he seems like he could still make an impact. AJ Epinesa, he's someone who could be a depth piece, that rotational Joseph Asai level player, but isn't going to cost a whole lot of money. And then edge Jadeveon Clowney is kind of similar to Cam Jordan, older player that can still make an impact. And so these are all positions that I think the Bengals need to sign someone, or they need to get another person in that room somehow. Maybe not one of these players, but these are all big name players that I think the Bengals could reasonably go after. Um, Next, forced necessities. These are players that the Bengals, they have to sign at least one of these guys in my mind. I don't think they can enter the draft or come out of the draft at least. They would have to sign them very soon after the draft. Basically, they have to enter week one with one of these players in my mind as it stands right now. So linebacker Bobby Wagner, it's kind of again similar to Cam Jordan, older player who's still kind of shown he can play. Probably won't cost a whole lot due to his age. However, he's a leader on the team. And Al Golden has said that he has faith in Barrett Carter and Demetrius Knight Jr. So he considers them starting linebackers, but I don't currently want to bet on those guys being starting caliber linebackers. And I liked both of them. I like them both as prospects. Don't get me wrong. But based on what we saw at the end of last year, I don't want to walk into week one of this year with that plan. I would rather sign someone like Bobby Wagner who can help be a role model for those players, who will be a role model for those players, and is one of the best linebackers that the league has seen. He's a free agent. Go after him. Let him educate these younger guys. Bobby Okereke is younger than Bobby Wagner, but he would be another younger guy. He's going to cost a bit more, though. I think his market value was about $12 million. So that's a swing. Matt Milano, he is also a guy who could be depth, maybe a starter over Barrett Carter for the Bengals. He does have some injury issues, though, so there's a concern there. And the Bengals do need a backup safety. So Jabril Peppers and Jordan Poyer, I think, would be decent there. We don't need them to start all the time, hopefully. We just need them to come in every now and then. So get them on a cheapish contract. Let them be out there, play. Jabril Peppers is familiar with the AFC North. He just came off a season with the Steelers. Jordan Poyer is familiar with, just being a leader on a team. And while he's not the same player that he was, I think he can still be a good player, a good help to Jordan Battle. And speaking of Jordan Battle, something else you have to think of is Jordan Battle might not be on this team soon. Do the Bengals want to re-sign him? Do they not want to re-sign him? We don't know. Will they get the contract done if they even do want to re-sign him? So this safety position is going to become a bigger problem very soon. And then defensive tackle David Onyemata, who I just butchered his name, sorry, but he is going to be. I think he's someone who the Bengals should go after. The depth in this draft class for defensive tackle is not great. Peter Woods, he's one of the top ranking defensive tackles in this draft, and he's kind of a lot of potential, not a lot of production, kind of like how Shamar Stewart was last year. Could Peter Woods turn into a phenomenal defensive tackle? Yes. Could Jonathan Allen, help save Chris Jenkins' career? Yes. But I would like to see them bring in another guy, and I would rather them bring in a more proven vet than try to, coach up another rookie, because we've seen that takes time before, and the Bengals are in a window right now where they need to win now. And so to look at that even more, I want to break down the Bengals depth chart. Okay, this is just the defensive side of the ball. So on the defensive line, we have Myles Murphy, Jonathan Allen, who was brought in through free agency, TJ Slayton, and Boye Mafe, who was brought in through free agency. Now, TJ Slayton, and I've been there too. Not the most respected player on the Bengals D-line, but he actually did have similar or better stats than DJ Reader when he was a Bengal. So TJ Slayton was quiet, didn't make a lot of noise, but I do think he has kind of earned back that starting role at the defensive tackle position, at least based on who's available right now to us. Backups are looking like it's going to be BJ Hill, Chris Jenkins, and then Shamar Stewart. And again, we're banking. Cedric Johnson and McKinley Jackson. Sorry about that, guys. But Shamar Stewart is really the key here, and arguably Cedric Johnson as well. But Shamar Stewart is that first round pick. If he can develop, the Bengals will actually have a really, really strong defensive line with the guys that they've brought in. But again, I don't want to bank on Shamar Stewart developing right away. I think we need to get at least one more edge guy in there. someone who can help Shamar Stewart develop, who can help Cedric Johnson develop, because Cedric Johnson has shown flares as well. I would like to see some of that. Linebacker, Barrett Carter and Demetrius Knight are the starters. Backups are Oren Barks, Joe Gills Harris, and Shaka Hayward. This room is just, this needs an overhaul, in my opinion. I like Carter and Knight. Burks is not great depth, in my opinion. Joe Giles Harris and Hayward are basically practice squad players or special teamers, but they need one more guy in there at the very least. Cornerback room is actually the room I'm the least worried about. DJ Turner, Dax Hill, and Jalen Davis with backups in Josh Newton and DJ Ivy. Yes, would you maybe like some competition in there for Jalen Davis? Yeah, but that's in, your best case scenario. That is the thing I'm least worried about here. Jalen Davis has shown he can be a good nickel. Maybe bring in one other guy, but I'm not, risking anything with that. And then safety, Bryan Cook brought in through free agency and Jordan Battle, with backups being DeJohn Anthony and PJ Jules. Again, this is just a depth issue. I like Jordan Battle. I like Bryan Cook, but as soon as one of them goes down, I don't know that I trust DeJohn Anthony and PJ Jules to start for long term. So that's where our issue lies, this depth. And what do the Bengals need? So right now, I would argue they need linebacker the most. Let's look at this again. Barrett Carter and Demetrius Knight are our starters. I would say they need linebacker the most. The problem is, what happens when the linebackers are gone? So let's look at linebacker here. I wrote free agent targets. I did not mean to write free agent targets. These are obviously all draft players. Anyway, let's look at linebacker. They're in the middle. So Sonny Styles, let's say he doesn't fall. Okay. CJ Allen and Anthony Hill Jr. are both possibly expected to go in round 1. But at 10, I think they're both a bit of a reach. I think you'd be reaching there, and you really need linebackers. So are you then willing to sacrifice, hoping that Jacob Rodriguez or Jake Galde is there in round 2? Or maybe even Anthony Hill Jr. falls to round 2? That's a risk in itself as well, right? Because what happens if they don't fall to you, if they get picked up right before that? Then you're waiting on round 3 for potentially your starting linebacker if Demetrius Knight Jr. and Barrett Carter don't develop. So there's a lot of risk here. But then also, if you're at 10 and Sonny Styles is gone, I don't feel comfortable. And I like CJ Allen as a prospect. He reminds me, a lot of Demetrius Knight Jr. in some ways. And I liked Demetrius Knight as a prospect. But CJ Allen, he isn't 10 worthy, right? He's not pick 10 worthy there for me. Okay. And we talked about safety. Caleb Downs, that's who, coming out of Ohio State, that's who a lot of Bengals fans are wanting, right? So Caleb Downs, let's say he's gone. Well, I feel okay taking Dylan Theineman in round 1, especially after his combine. He looked really good at Oregon. He's got a good profile. I'd be okay with that, especially giving him a year to be a backup behind like Bryan Cook. I would feel really comfortable taking that because, again, there's a chance Jordan Battle isn't on this team next year, and we need that safety depth. So just kind of, getting that done, getting that contract just kind of knocked out with Jordan Battle would help a ton too. But I say Dylan Theineman at 10 would be okay. But then after that, if you don't take a safety, Emmanuel McNeil Warren could be available in round 2, may go late round 1. And then cornerback, Mansour Delane, yeah, that's who's falling to us in round 1 in a lot of mocks. But like we talked about in the depth chart, is that really our most dire need? Is cornerback the most dire need for the Cincinnati Bengals? Because what happens a lot in the mock drafts that I've been running, and I've been running a lot of them, is you take Delane because all those other guys, Styles is gone, Dynaman's gone, Downs is gone, Reuben Bain Jr. is gone. Everyone you could think of is gone. So you take Delane if you don't want to risk McCoy, because McCoy is coming off injury. He could have a Will Johnson here. We don't know. But let's say you take Delane And then you were like, okay, I hope Jacob Rodriguez or one of these other guys is available in round 2. And then they get taken right before. We saw this last year with Walter Nolan. Walter Nolan got taken right before the Bengals, and the Bengals appeared to freak out, and they took Shamar Stewart. Do I hope Shamar Stewart develops and does well? Yes. I hope he becomes a Hall of Famer. But that was not, I think, objectively the best pick at that point in the draft. And I'm afraid that's going to happen again this year if the Bengals don't sign at least 2 free agents, 2 more free agents. They have the money to do it. They have the money to sign all their draft picks and to also sign 2 cheap veteran free agents. I think they can knock it out. I would do a linebacker and then I would do a safety, because both of those positions you can get guys for pretty cheap, and you can get a starter caliber linebacker for fairly cheap in Bobby Wagner. I think he'll be decently cheap for what you get for him. And safety, you just need a depth guy. You just need a leader. If they want to go corner, that's fine too. Or even rotational edge, that's cool too. But get rid of one of those needs, because we haven't even talked about the need of a guard potentially, or a center, or competition for Andre Yoshivas at wide receiver 3. You enter in the other side of the ball, things get much worse. So I hope the Bengals continue to add in free agency as we get closer to the draft, because right now I am not comfortable with where they are. I don't think they're in a good position, and I think that they have set themselves up to end up reaching for someone that they wouldn't have needed to reach for if they had just signed one more guy. I appreciate you all for stopping by and watching this video. Let me know your thoughts below. Do you think that the Bengals are in a pickle? Do you think they're going to end up reaching on a player? Who do you hope the Bengals draft? Let me know all the things down below. And until next time, go do something nice for someone.